Yes, sure.
Very warm greetings and good evening to all the panelists and audience members. As a part of Global 2021, the International Evaluation Week from 31st May to June 4th, 21, organized by CLEAR Initiative and supported by the World Bank, BMU Niti Aayog is hosting a series of 4 events on monitoring and evaluation to bring together key stakeholders in the MNE ecosystem and discuss the need for a systematic and scientific MNE culture. On behalf of DMU, I, Ashutosh Jain, Deputy Director General, would like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone to the first session of this series on evidence for stronger MNE ecosystems. Availability of good quality, reliable administrative data plays a crucial role in enabling robust monitoring of government schemes on a regular basis. Administrative data can also be efficiently used for post and time-effective evaluations of programs along with survey-based methods. This session is aimed at understanding the challenges faced by Indian governments in building high-quality, real-time administrative data systems and discuss emerging solutions aimed at driving enhanced data-driven governance. So before I introduce the flow of this, I would will be able to unmute during the session and can also reply to the questions posted on question and answer chat box available on the WebEx platform. Audience who are joining as participants are requested to post their questions in question and answer chat box of WebEx comment section along with the name, organization name, and contact email ID. If any of the questions remain unanswered due to time constraints, we aim to send individual replies to their respective email IDs. Participants are also encouraged to write their feedback to us. With this, let me now walk you all over the flow of session. I'll start with a brief introduction of esteemed panelists, followed by opening remarks by each of panelists for around 5 minutes each, followed by conversation with panelists to deep dive into some of the key themes emerging through their initial discussion. Then we'll have 15-minute question and answer session wherein the panelists will address the questions from the audience. After that, the session will end with a closing remark by each panel member. So to start with this introduction, first of all, we have Dr. Santosh Mathew. Dr. Mathew is a former IAS officer and is currently working as country lead public policy and finance with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, New Delhi. He holds a PhD in development studies and an MSc in social research methods from the University of Sussex and an MA in economics from the Delhi School of Economics. Next with us, we have Shri K.D. Mathi. Shri Mathi is a former Indian Statistical Service officer and is presently working with UNICEF India as planning MNE specialist since 2011. He holds a master's in statistics and MPhil from University of Delhi. He has over 30 years of experience in improving data systems, designing social sector programs and schemes, and designing monitoring and evaluation systems. And third panelist is Ms. Aparna Krishnan. Ms. Krishnan is a project director with JPOL South Asia and leads an initiative aimed at working with governments to leverage administrative data use in policy research and decisions. She has a master's in international policy from University of California and master's in economics from Berkeley Institute. With this, we'll start with the opening discussion by panelists. And to start with, I would like to invite Dr. Santosh Mathew to share his opening thoughts on the kind of opportunities that exist in India for using administrative data for enhanced program governance and better outcomes. Over to you, Dr. Mathew.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For me, the holy grail is really the coming together of MNE systems and program management. Unfortunately, the quality of administrative data having been a casualty for a long time, monitoring and evaluation systems has been to actually generate independent data and then use that as a sort of a mirror to hold up to people who actually are engaged in program management. I believe that there are ways in which the quality of administrative data can be elevated and elevated dramatically, such that the best in class M&E systems can actually be built out of administrative data. And in making my argument in these opening remarks, I would like to draw your attention to two efforts that are currently ongoing in the Government of India, both in the Niti Aayog, one led by DMEO, what is the Data Governance Quality Index, and the other is in NITI's Aspirational District Program. Improving the quality of administrative data. Our normal understanding is that if you want to improve the quality of administrative data, you need to be having access to the primary unit of activity. For example, if it is health program administration that you're engaged in, then you need to have access to data on who, for example, are the beneficiaries of a vaccination program. Or if it is nutrition, who would be the beneficiaries of the ICDS program, the names of children, their parents, the Anganwadi center to which they went. But I'd like to argue before you that a significant innovation that is being conducted by the Aspirational District Program is that without having access to this primary unit of data, they are now conceiving of a program through which you can randomize at the next higher level, use a good understanding of program paperwork that is there, use the supervisory layer that is built on top of the implementation layer to be able to get data which is then back checked using an independent source. So let me take the case of the Anganwadi program. It's called the ICDS, Integrated Child Development Scheme. Because, and in some cases, the data on individual children and their parents are not available, and because the program has a requirement that the lady supervisor, which supervises a number of these the centers, have got to conduct inspections, what the Aspirational District Program is thinking of is to randomize on the center and then further go into the detailing is that you pick up the third, eighth, and ninth. I'm giving you an example, of course. That you produce a photograph of that register with the third, eighth, and ninth child, and you report the verification that the supervisor did on the third, eighth, and ninth child onto a mobile phone app that is released to the supervisor. What this makes available is that you get a sample of the primary data, and then you do a further sampling of the sample to be able to establish over time the trust score of the original data and of the supervisor that is actually reporting on this data. The thesis, if you being that actually do a data fidelity and backcheck exercise, is very cheap to do because you're doing a sample of a sample that you will over time be able to improve the quality of the administrative data. This is one example that I wanted to lay before. The second is what DMEO is doing in terms of the Data Governance Quality Index. Recognizing the importance of the way government ministries and departments handle data, they have come up with an entire schema that involves 6 buckets in terms of data generation, data quality, use of technology, and so forth, by which they're analyzing and scoring individual departments on the quality of their data infrastructure. And they're triggering a race by which every department, in their effort to show up as being better than the other, improves the quality of the administrative the data that will actually be available. It is my belief that these and other efforts to improve administrative data lies at the very heart of program managers and M&E specialists being able to come together in such a way that in a most cost-efficient way, program management is able to improve its impact outcomes. Of course, impact evaluation, I'm a great fan of, is an entirely different beast, and that needs to go on the way it does. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Matthew. Now I'll invite Shri K.B. Methi for his opening remarks. I request Gunjan to please share the presentation. Over to you, Shri Methi ji.
Thank you. I was muted. So I'd like to thank Dr. Matthew to have set the tone of how do you improve the administrative data system. I would like to turn some of the governance relating to data. Now, in the scheme of good governance, there has always been an endeavor to measure the extent of access the people have through several schemes and programs given by the government for improving the life experiences or the well-being of the people. And if I may reflect on the UN's 10 principles of official statistics, it reflects that there is a causal relationship between good governance and a good official statistical system, which in a way means at the core of a good, robust official statistics system is the people, mainly because the data is not only required for an effective monitoring and evaluation of the schemes and programs, but it is also required by the political entity to retain the trust and confidence of the people in their governance. Now, I do see the entire data process as a flow, like a river overflowing boundaries of the state, districts, and the villages, but in a way that every entity, whether it is the national government, the state, or the district, takes its share out of that flow and also become accountable for the purity of the process that we have. Now, in the given context of SDG, I think globally there is now more and more focus on improving the administrative data system. Can I move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So, as I said in the beginning, I would dwell more on the structural aspect of the administrative data system. As we know, the administrative data system is largely in a federal structure within the domain of the department ministries, whether at the national level or at basically at the state and the UT level, because the program gets implemented at that level. So it becomes quite a captive input for the state. For example, let us take the example of health MIS system. Now, the design and the structure of the MIS is built at the national level, but the inputs are to come from the states where the actual implementation of the health policies and the schemes are happening. So what happens, given the independence and the priorities of the states, it becomes quite a challenging phenomena for any MIS system which is based on the state's priorities to retain its purity and the quality of the data. So what do we need? What we need is basically, as I said, a river-like convergent administrative data flow with all its reforms in it. Now you can construe that to be a statutory body or a non-statutory body, which has an administrative independence, irrespective of the state and the national, with all its independence in terms of its budgetary support, technical know-how, and all other entities that is required to be independent. Why am I saying that? That is based on the experience that we are seeing. The moment it becomes captive within a geographical area, the flow is lost and the purity of the database is lost. I would like to move on to the next slide, and which will be my largely the last slide, which is, recently in 2019 in UNICEF, we did a small study with two objectives. First, to see how do you map out the existing data systems that we have, and where are the gaps, and how do you strategize to get these data gaps filled. In that study, what emanated quite clearly, the level of dissatisfaction of the policymakers, largely at the state and the district, and obviously below district level. What is the dissatisfaction about? That whatever these MIS systems, largely in the social sector, are throwing out, do not meet their data demands. Why is it so? Largely because the design concept. The design is largely top-down approach, so it doesn't cater to the data requirement, giving the varying context of the different states that we have within the federal structure of India. So what is now finally required? I think there is a great demand for a uniform administrative data ecosystem led by an independent authority, not within the captivity of the state's domains. It moves out of it, but it caters to each of these sections. And finally, I would like to end by saying that there is one nation, there has to be one evidence strategy aligned to the requirements of the state and the UTs. In a sense, that has to be a bottom-up approach if we want to build on to a good, robust, reliable, impartial, administrative system. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Matthew rightly pointed out that data policies and strategies are the first steps towards building robust data systems. So with this, I would like to now invite Ms. Padma Krishnan to share her opening remarks on how can technology be leveraged to overcome some of these constraints and capabilities in this direction required to be developed.
Thank you so
Padma
much.
Krishnan, yeah.
It is a pleasure to be on this panel with my esteemed co-panelists, and we're very excited as well about our partnership with Niti Aayog's DMEO on exactly this issue of how to leverage administrative data use better in decision making. I have a couple of slides, if you could just move to the first slide. So building on what Mr. Mathew and Mr. Maiti just laid out, in our experience of working with several state governments and also at the national level, there is this continuum of challenges that we face. What we've seen in the last decade and a little bit more is tremendous increase in the volume of data that is becoming available, especially through digitized systems. However, the use of that data still remains constrained. A lot of it is used for reporting, but not even as much for program monitoring, as Mr. Mathew was saying, or this unified strategy of combining different data sets and thinking about how to improve decision-making, course correction, and program implementation. And there are different challenges. I would say one part of it is systems are not designed with the purpose for which data could be used. So a lot of them, when they go from paper to digital, still carry some of those same issues. So these are the kinds of quality challenges that Mr. Mathew alluded to. And so when these systems are developed, it's important to keep in mind, especially for data sets that are collected by frontline workers, on what are the right set of incentives, the intuitive user interface that will be required for data to become reliable and usable. Otherwise, it largely stays as information. And as we progress along that chain, what becomes important with MI systems, while we do see some dashboards and SMS alerts, there is often a lack of organizing of that data. So policymakers often complain, as was alluded to by Mr. Maiti as well, that there is an overload of data and it's not necessarily organized at the right level for the right use purpose. So at a block level, that the block officer or a district officer would like to see how a scheme is progressing on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis. Whereas at the state level, you might want to look at variations across different districts, utilization of programs by subgroups, by marginalized groups. And so in order to be able to derive those insights, it is important to organize the data, and often those capabilities are missing within governments to be able to work with the data sets that are being generated. And finally, the potential really comes from combining, say, a hospital data set with the health insurance data set, let's say with other nutrition or child health data sets, to look at where are there still gaps in program implementation? Where are the gaps in policies? Who is not yet reached? And could we actually, using the kind of analysis through the diagnostics that we do with existing data, could we design smart interventions and also look at the impact of these interventions using the same administrative data that is generating not just input and output data, but also outcome and impact information. And this is when you combine it with global evidence and with research, and the power of really harnessing or unlocking administrative data becomes possible. Next slide, please. Just to give you a snapshot of some of the work that we've been doing with governments, what we are learning from our experiences is that partnerships are important in a life cycle approach, not necessarily at a project-to-project basis, whereas while projects play a very important value in demonstrating use cases, it is important to engage through the policy life cycle, often in a cross-sector fashion, so that this enables you to work with data across different departments at the program level, but also at the policy level on issues of resource allocation and of planning and decision making, and then also at multiple levels. So at the frontline worker level, so I also liked how Mr. Maitri said data is a flow. So it flows both upwards from the frontline worker to the decision maker, and also downwards from top to bottom. And this exchange is what makes it valuable and would bring about a change in the way data is being used. So this requires really working on best practices from say research on large-scale data collection to how that could be applied to administrative data to improve quality and reliability, or truth scores, as what Mr. Matthew said, to things about how could we meaningfully analyze data both from a program, but also in collaboration or in coordination with other data sets that are available both within the government as well as external, and eventually actually using this data meaningfully to design smart policies and improve program implementation and eventually effectiveness. And so the larger point I'd like to make is that all of this is possible through a unified data strategy. So it is important to anchor almost everything into what do we want to use that data for. So for better quality data, for better monitoring, for better implementation and better decisions. And that then guides the kinds of systems that are developed, and that would throw up the data-driven outcomes that we're looking for. And that's I think the DMEO panel also highlights that point about the necessity of a unified data strategy. And from that, both the institutional measures as well as field level measures should emerge.
Thank you very much, Aparna Krishnanji. So with this, I think we have a broad context set, and it's time to deep dive into some of these aspects. So I'll move on to start with Dr. Matthew. He mentioned about need to have access to primary unit data, and we need to know about the beneficiaries of a particular program. So my question to you is, it is often witnessed that digitization is low at the last mile. For instance, data may be collected manually at the primary unit of the activity and then fed digitally at the block or district level. If we talk about PFMS integration, it is not yet completed till the last unit. How do you think this last mile digitization can be completed while ensuring good data quality?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So my view on this is that while we approach the goal of last mile digitization, which is at the level of the beneficiary, we can actually build a fairly good and robust administrative data system even before we get there. And that's the example that I was trying to give through the aspirational district program. Now, if you have last mile digitization, frankly, even if the data is collected manually, and then it is keyed in into a system, but at the primary unit of activity, which basically means it is at the level of the beneficiary. Mistakes are, of course, bound to happen, but through a systematic program of back checks, which is building up constantly a truth score. That can, and that truth score has to be built up algorithmically through a, and these truth scores are actually available to the people who are being reported upon. It is my thesis that it will trigger a kind of a reform incentive, a reform impulse within the system to get more and more accurate with data. Now, what is this claim of mine? Is that even if you do not have primary unit of data, which is what you said, the problem of digitization of the last mile, that is the example I gave of the ICDS, the Anganwadi. So even if you do not have the children digitized, as long as you have the list of Anganwadi centers, you can randomize on the Anganwadi center. You can then, what is the key really? The key is that when the lady supervisor does her inspection, she should not be the one who decides which center she should inspect. It should be a randomization effort, which is statistically sound, that should determine where she should inspect, when she should inspect, and what she should inspect. And how is that achieved? By randomization telling her which center she needs to go to, but telling her at a time when she just needs to know, reaching there and being required to upload a photograph of the register, a manual register in which the data is entered, and then the mobile phone app telling her which of serial number it is that she needs to photograph and which she needs to check. And once that data is digitized, and that's so much easier to digitize because you're not digitizing the population, you're just digitizing the sample of the population. And then when you do an independent back check of what the supervisor did, so that's a sample of a sample, it becomes a much easier problem to solve. And even if you do this, you're going to improve your administrative data by leaps and bounds, is the argument that I would like to leave in today's discussion. But this is not to discount what your original question, which is that the digitization of the activity itself, that's of course what we need to. But then we know there are constraints of connectivity, there are constraints of availability of devices, there's constraints of finance, all of which is increasingly going away because these costs are going down. In India, connectivity is becoming quite rampant. Device costs are developing rapidly. And that is why I believe that DMEO's DGQI, it is actually setting up the incentive structure for administrators and for departments to actually go down this pathway. And therefore, not waiting for that holy grail of primary unit of digitization to happen, and using the DGQI as two forces that move us closer and closer to higher data quality is the way I would like to visualize the answer to the question that you made. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Matthew. Now I'll quickly move to Srimati ji. He mentioned about the governance of data and the data process as a flow of, river moving across the states and center. So my point is Indian data systems are still quite fragmented and work in silos with one another. If we talk about data on scholarship schemes getting collected by multiple ministries, Ministry of Education, Tribal Affairs, Social Justice and Empowerment, or for that matter, different components of energy sector data disparately collected by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and Ministry of Power. So how do you think this challenge can be mitigated? Dr. Matthew.
Yeah, so let me unmute myself. So this is definitely an interesting and very important point. But if you allow me a minute, supplement to what Dr. Matthew mentioned in response to your thing, I think we need to look at this admin data system slightly differently. Admin data system has to be seen not as a punishment mechanism. Today, if you look at the admin data system, everybody is interested in putting a number which is close to a target or more than the target. That mentality needs to change. We need to see admin data, as Dr. Matthew said, a truth set. And we have no options, frankly speaking. The time is really slipping out our hand to depend on survey-based data system, which is costly, difficult, and that also is not close to truth set, to be very frank. So we have to see admin data system a little more differently. We have to rely on the admin data system and not a punishment mechanism for people why you did not reach that particular target. So there are many other things that can be supplemented, a triangulation process and other things. All those are possible to really purify your admin data system. But coming to your specific question that you mentioned about that, given the fragmented databases, how do you, and it actually doesn't give you a clear situation analysis of what is happening, because for a comprehensive situation analysis based on admin data system, you really have to have information from all sector, given that your metadata is correct, consistent, and things like that. Now, when these entire data systems were being developed, some of the new technologies and innovations were not there. So how we designed the admin system at that point in time, it was different. And if you are giving the designing of this entire admin system today to new generation people, or to the people who are, aware of the modern technologies and innovations, they will design it different way. There are methodologies by which these can be connected, can be integrated. I'm not going into details of what is API and this and that, but you need to have, and they are available, they're easily done. So you have to design your MIS system keeping in view that it will not be a silo. Now, HIMS system need to connect to the ICDS, because if you see the lifespan, it starts from the birth, then it moves on to an area when the child has to move on to nutrition, survival, then education, the preschool education, then into schools. So it's a lifespan. You need to capture this lifespan through a robust design of a admin data system. And these connectivities, they may function independently. It's like the compartments. They are all independent compartments, starting from seat number 1 to seat number 72, but there is a connectivity. So when I design it, I design comprehensively, and then I connect it. There are many ways it can be connected. Technologies are there. So today it is fragmented. We need to relook our designs, think through, and as I said in my presentation, don't think through from the requirement at the national level, think through from the requirement from the bottom up. Today, if I give an example, we talk about the third tier of governance, which is the Panchayati Raj. Do you have any data at the Panchayat level? Now, the Ministry of Rural Development talks about setting up SDG targets even at the Panchayat or the GP level. Is it possible? Do I have the data? We do not have. So design have to be thought in a different way. Aligning requirements from the bottom to the top. Don't overburden it. Keep it simple and provide connectivity at all levels. What I said, each entity will take its share, but ensuring the purity of that flow of data is retained. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthewji. You talked about use of technology. So I'll take forward this with Aparna Krishnanji. Aparna ji, you have been working in many states. So I have a question for you. Can you please share some case studies of how technologies can be used for last mile data generation? You talked about that data use of data is also a constraint, and it's not being used in the states. But there must be some best practices. And also with widespread use of new technologies, when collected data is shared widely, it becomes even more important to protect personal or sensitive data. So can you also share some best practices for ensuring this?
Sure. Yes, I think for sure with newer digitization technologies coming up, there are better practices, quicker ways of collecting data, especially at the field level through app-based technologies, which is quite popular in health, nutrition now, as there are many systems that allow frontline workers to use a mobile phone or a tablet to collect information. It is important then in thinking through the design of that system and building in certain validations even into at that point of collection itself. And I think a lot of the times, more than technology, it is also the review of the data by officials in the chain that then check for fidelity of the data, validity of the data, and are able to take actions on it. So for instance, we had a study in Karnataka that looked at the impact of biometric devices to improve attendance of health center workers. Interestingly, it didn't have any impact eventually, because it was found that even though data was being collected in real time, there was no action being taken for lack of attendance or for unaccounted for leaves. So as a result, after an initial increase in attendance, it dropped because people realized that data was not being used or reviewed by anyone. So that is one layer of review. Whether you use it for things like validating the data or for feedback is critical that it's there. At the point of collection, of course, transactional databases do generate better information than when a person has to enter the data. So things like EPDS, for instance, the data is generated through point of sale devices. There are also lots of applications of satellite based imaging data right now, especially in agriculture and in energy and environment related work. Similarly, use of sensors are becoming popular as well for recording things like footfall data at, say, public facilities. So it again, what becomes important is how do we handle the collection and management and storing of this data. And so while you can put in checks and balances for measuring the quality of the data, it becomes important to also define how the data gets used. So we did an evaluation, for instance, of sensors that were used by the Gujarat Pollution Control Board to do environmental audits. And it was a very simple practice of randomly assigning an auditor to a firm who would, and then that person's audit is back-checked by an independent team that reports on the subsample of the data. Now, reconciling the auditor's information and this back-check information itself showed us that it improves the truth-telling. Otherwise, they report just under the required compliance levels. So this, for instance, a simple system of back-checks combined with the technology of getting direct data from the stacks of firms has proved to be, it's applicable in any sector that you can think of. It could be in the nutrition example that Mr. Mathew laid out for PDS data audits, and in a number of cases. So that's one example. I'll stop there for on the topics of data quality and move a little bit on the question on privacy, because especially increasingly as individual level information is collected and it becomes available, there is of course, there is the value and the kinds of insights that you can generate with more and more disaggregated data. As researchers will tell you that more disaggregated the data, the more insights you're able to derive from it, and also the ability to link across data sets and therefore analyze things meaningfully. With that, it is absolutely critical, of course, to keep in mind the privacy concerns. And it's really a combination of measures, I would say. There are, of course, legal considerations that is evolving in the country. There's legislation like the Aadhaar Act and the Right to Information that currently lay out certain broad guidelines. But as the Personal Data Protection Bill comes into force, there are many legislative guidelines to follow. But in addition to that, there are technical or statistical methods that are available. Researchers have traditionally used methods called statistical disclosure limitation, which essentially de-identify data and reduce the risk of disclosing private information, or for someone else to be able to rematch data sets and be able to identify the people based on which the analysis is reported. So there's a lot of development advances, I would say, in statistical techniques that are available, things like differential privacy, which have come in along with technologies like machine learning, which make it more and more difficult to be able to identify an individual person in a record. So that's a set of technical measures that will need to be taken. And eventually, I think the institutional or the process measures, things like MOUs, data use agreements, confidentiality arrangements, not just at the point of enabling data access, but also after data access, which is systematic means of monitoring how the data is being used. There are mechanisms like the 5 SAFEs framework, which are used to say, is there for safe data, safe people, safe disclosure. So those measures combined with legal, technical, and procedural, I would say, will give a comprehensive set of ensuring data privacy. There are a number of resources available as well. There is a handbook that we have released on using administrative data that goes into great detail along with case studies and examples. And so it is important, I think, to also have differential mechanisms for sharing data. There is open data, which is typically aggregate statistics, and that is for general wide consumption. And then there is data access for use both within the government as well as in collaboration with researchers and civil society, which requires a certain level of disaggregation. And that, when enabling that, there is value from those engagements because it is addressing a particular problem or it is answering a policy question. So those are much more customized data access arrangements where privacy protections are in place and it is exchanged under these institutional arrangements. And then ultimately, there will always be a small set of data, which is, say, negative data, that things that cannot be shared, and those are confidential information. So it is useful to think about different levels of access and the related privacy mechanisms for each level.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really very enlightening. As per time schedule, we need to move to the question and answer session for the audience. But I have a very small, brief question from Dr. Matthew. He mentioned about the DGQ exercise which we undertook with ministry. So it has been observed that different ministries, departments are often at different levels of data preparedness. So what do you think are the key factors behind these differences? For example, institutional mechanisms are different, capability constraints. So I'll just request very briefly if you can share your mind.
The fundamental problem is actually a data disconnect in India. And what is the data disconnect? Almost all data, administrative data in India, which is used for program management, is actually data that is aggregated around district boundaries or administrative boundaries. You will get district level data, you will get state level data, you will get national level data, or if it is the implementing department, around that department's administrative boundary. The junior engineer, assistant engineer, so on and so forth. But governance is fundamentally a political process. So unless you have data that is administrative in nature, also reshaped along politically salient boundaries, the real ability of politics to positively impact or to demand accountability of administrative processes, there is so much diffusion and haziness that actually steps in. So one of the fundamental requirements of India, if you ask me on the data side, is to set up a data infrastructure that is constantly reshaping admin data from admin boundaries and making it available also on political boundaries, so that the interrogation by the elected and the electorate, and then by the elected and the executive, becomes an accountable process. Now, of course, I'm talking of 2 to 3 degrees of separation in terms of your answer. But we should not lose sight of this, because it is when this really begins to happen. Now, because I'm noticing a lot of questions on the question and answer side, where, many of these questions, one range of questions is so much data that is going on, it is not being used. And the range of questions is that there is so much data, civil society is unable to access it. There is so much data that is being repeatedly collected, but yet where is it being? So this is all at its very basic level. My thesis is this disconnect, but that does not mean that this is a sufficient condition. It's a necessary condition that I'm talking about. Now, coming to DGQI, one thing that your DGQI exercise revealed is that almost all departments, or most departments with a few notable exceptions, are really at a very low level of data preparedness. And that's why what you have started, the journey that you have triggered, is a very important journey. And there is one thing that the administrative system really responds to is when they are being benchmarked and when they are being compared. Now, your DGQI exercise today only has comparison. It does not have benchmarking. But this is not the time to do benchmarking because almost everybody will be below the benchmark. So taking this, persisting with your DGQI, refining it so that improvements happen, providing technical assistance to ministries, departments, and organizations in improving their score, and then building in those data interchange systems. In fact, the Ministry of Rural Development has a program which is actually called Disha. And the Disha program's entire raison d'etre is to actually bring in data from all Government of India ministries to rural development servers, use the local governance directory of the Department of Panchayat Raj. There's something called LGD, Local Government Directory, where this comparison really because all the political and administrative boundaries are earmarked in LGD. Of course, there is a question of keeping it up to date because new panchayats are being created, new administrative divisions are being created, but that's government really has a program. So paying more attention to the LGD, Local Governance Directory, ensuring that the Disha program is able to get the data and then repackaging this and driving your DGQI with consistency, because DGQI actually answers some of the questions that are there, because you're actually giving more marks to departments which make their data available for this kind of analysis. So this, I think, is really the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll quickly move on to, there are many questions. I'm really thankful to all the audience for showing such a vast interest. So the first question, which is coming from Dr. Arijit Das, who is a fellow India Development Foundation. It's for Mr. Mathi. In India, MIS is developed by agencies for different governments and departments. How we can build synergy between states versus center and one department with other department? So this is the question for Mr. Mathi.
Okay, so this is an interesting question, and that is what I was referring to, that we have very captive databases developed by different ministries and departments. And I would add to that since the quality and the data need of the state governments and or specific departments are not met, then you start developing a parallel data system. The study that I was referring to, which was done by UNICEF for over 1 year, we went to the states, we interviewed different senior officers at different level, and the conclusion was that with the advent of a senior officer, when he or she gets dissatisfied with the existing data system, he starts developing a new parallel system, a new dashboard which does not speak to each other, is an unsustainable system. And so, which UNICEF also supports. I'm sorry to say that, because the demand is from the government. We always work with the government. But as soon as the person moves out to a new assignment, those databases, and the dashboards are actually dashed to the ground. So that's what I was referring to, that you have to have one uniform administrative data reforms policy. That policy, have to align to the data requirement right from the bottom to the top, so that everybody's data requirement for program management and monitoring can be addressed. So you have to take out that data from the captivity of the department. Sometimes even the national level data are not shared. I think Another area of concern, you have to give access of administrative data to the researcher, to the academicians, and you start using it. If you don't start using it, the data will get obsolete. Nobody will do research. Nobody will tell you what are the challenges. So you have to really, and this is another the 10 principles of official statistics, which Government of India has endorsed, that your data, that whatever way you are collecting from n number of sources, need to be disseminated, because it is for the people to really look at what is happening. And as Dr. Matthew mentioned, there is a political dimension to that, to the data. So data has to be disseminated timely way, let people use it, and because they don't use it, they don't have trust on it. So have a uniform policy, have an independent policy, take out of the captivity of the different data producers, let it be a flow. I would say that. And then mentality need to change. I have seen in my working with the government for more than 25 years that we hardly use administrative data for any policy making. I'm very happy that Niti Aayog is using administrative data for their SDG index, which is an excellent step. And I think the data quality index will be an additional positive states towards it. So it to start using your admin data, disseminate it, good, bad, let people start using it. Some states are using it. I don't want to name that state now here, but that has improved the quality of admin data system in those states. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have next question from Sandani Sheikh for Ms. Aparna. How to leverage Internet of Things in MME framework so that the quality of data is ensured? The IoT data is objective and real-time in nature. We may also integrate the IoT data with the dashboards which can be used for decision making in the governance.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit of this when I spoke. There is potential. I think it depends a little bit based on the sector and the types of data. So we see a little bit more in say, agriculture and related to service-related sectors. I think the potential exists. I think it's really up to the imagination and the technical capabilities that a department or ministry could develop. And it does improve the quality to the extent that you get it in real time. It enables you to react quicker if there are deviations in the data. And then, of course, the level of granularity that you can get with, say, sensors is much more than if data is otherwise collected through a survey or individually. So I think it is anyway more of a comment. I agree, there's potential. We haven't seen too many examples just yet.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll be able to take only one more question from Sanjeev Sridharan for Dr. Matthew. How do your visions of data system help our system become more sensitive and responsive to the needs of the most disadvantaged? How do we create data systems that help with reducing inequities?
Yeah, thank you, Sanjeev. So see, the great thing about India is that we have the underprivileged, the poor, their electoral clout is substantial. Now, that is the power that we have to harness if we have to make our data systems responsive to them. There is no reason otherwise that because of some intrinsic motivation of administrators that they would really want to make our data systems more responsive to the needs of the underprivileged. And that is why the importance of ensuring that all administrative data is repackaged along electoral districts, so that the power that the poor and the underprivileged today exercise in the electoral market is able to translate into the demands that are made on the administrative system and on the data systems of our country. That is the only sustainable way in which we can make data work for the poor and the underprivileged. I acknowledge that this is not a short-term journey, something that can be achieved tomorrow. But this is the directionality with which we have to move. We have to harness the power of our democracy for making data work for the people who need it most, is the sort of way I would underline the answer to your question, Sanjeev.
Okay, so just one last question from Ishita Vadwan. Which tools and this is for Ms. Aparna, which tools can be best suggested to learn for government officials for good data analytics?
Okay, a large number of tools are now available, especially while working with large data sets. A number of free packages, especially with R and Python, are becoming available for use within governments, and we're noticing a lot of that as well relative to sort of paid statistical or licensed packages. But I think the more important question is analytics for what? And so it is important, in most of our experience, we see that it's not one single package or a dashboard that you can fix on to an MIS system that will solve all the problems. So it is important, I think, to first ask the right questions in terms of what is the data being collected for, is it usable, and what do we want to answer with it? And then there are a variety of methods that are then available to address those questions. So from monitoring, so things like descriptive and summary statistics, there are more standardized packages, but for much more diagnostic or for evaluation studies is often customized statistical analysis that will have to be undertaken. Also, a number of free courses that are available. I would, of course, recommend data analysis for development economics. There's a DEDP program on the MIT Open Courseware program that is intended for social scientists for using data along both analysis and evaluation studies. And a number of these tools will help refine the kinds of analysis that you could do, or statistical thinking around how to work with large data.
Yeah, thank you very much. Definitely we acknowledge there are many questions coming up, but due to time constraints, we would not be able to take them right now. But as I mentioned earlier, we'll be taking it offline and we'll be sharing the responses from esteemed panelists. Now, very quickly, I'll request each of the panelists. We talked about data policies, data strategies, data systems, data outcome, use of technology, and so many other things which are important in as far as data ecosystem is concerned. So very quickly, in less than 2 minutes, each of the panelists. So I'll start in reverse order now with Ms. Aparna Krishnan. Your closing remarks.
Yeah, if there's one thing I would say is anchoring all digitization and data strategies in data use. So go thinking beyond reporting and immediate monitoring to long-term program implementation, course correction, and thinking about outcomes and impact, and using that overarching strategy to define the data interventions that to take up.
Wow. Thank you very much for being quite brief and crisp. So over to you, Matthewji, your closing remarks.
Okay, so what I look at it is that M&E is a both-way pull. It uses your data system, at the same time it also strengthens your data. So keep M&E strong, gain and also in addition to this is that desegregation is a challenge in this country. So I think Niti Aayog is in the right position to define a data desegregation policy, at least with regards to the indicators that have been defined under the SDG NIF, that is the National Indicator Framework. If we can define that and get it implemented, lots of data gaps can be, bridged. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your closing remarks. Now coming back to Dr. Mathew, finally your closing remarks. I'll request you to be very brief in the interest of time. Thank you.
Yeah, so besides reiterating what I started with, which is the importance of improving the quality of admin data and using it for quality programming, I would like to advocate the use of things like night light luminosity, like anonymized call data records, to be able to calculate the delta in the GDP of local regions. Use that both for administrative boundaries and electoral boundaries. and use that to set off a DGQI, a sort of a race, and then help ministries and local administrators and politicians chase that almost impossible to manipulate delta using these two night-like luminosity and anonymized call data records. And then you will find a new energy in government to be able to use M&E system and want to use admin data so that the the GDPs that they relate to, that they feel accountable to, that's now getting constantly measured. And that way, I believe, will trigger some really virtuous cycles of both data use and outcomes for poor and marginalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Matthew. We are just in time. I'm sure that it was indeed a good recap for all our audience. And I believe this session has thrown substantial light on the 3 steps of data preparedness. That is the data strategy to formulate a plan for data-based governance, development of robust and organized data systems while taking care of exchange and security mechanisms, and finally, synergistically using data for better governance, drawing insights from data, using them to improve outcomes of government programs and informing future policies. So thanks to all the esteemed panel members for sharing such nuanced learnings from their rich experience with us. I also want to thank our audience for their active engagement and sharing their perspectives so keenly. So with this, I'll once again like to thank everyone who joined this session and announce the closure of this session. But I would also like to mention that BMU is organizing the next session on standardization of monitoring and evaluation systems, a walkthrough to result-based monitoring and evaluation system in India tomorrow, that is 2nd June at 5:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Hope to see you all in the next session as well. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.